You see the smile on my face? I'm smiling because the Mets have secured the series victory. And by no means was this easy. We have literally so much to get into in today's post-game. How's it going, everybody? Thank you all so much for coming back on the channel for the latest post-game coverage. This being after a Mets series victory, winning 9-6 over the Philadelphia Phillies today. What a long, exhausting game that this felt like, not just for the Mets and the Phillies, but for the people watching too. This was an eventful game, to put it lightly. Everything that you could imagine to transpire in one baseball game is, in a nutshell, how everything transpired today. There were just so many things that went on. In the end, the Mets, again, secured this victory. I'm very excited to get into this one, folks. So to all my people in the live stream right now, thank you all so much for being here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal if we aren't there already, and we'll keep rolling. And, of course, to all my viewers on replay, thank you so much for being here as well. We'll be going on between 20 minutes and a half hour, and if you want to see the full live stream like everyone live right now in the chat, you can do that by simply having that notification on, of course, after subscribing, and that way you can be in before I cut things off after I go live, because we're going to go at minimum an hour today. But again, I'm very excited. I know you guys are too. I know that this was a heart attack of a game in typical Mets fashion. But before I go any further, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone that I see in the chat. I see Jubilee. How's it going? Edward, Joshua, Bronx. Let's go down the list further. Peter, Mama Worm. How's it going? Manuel, Charles, Pete, Timothy, Michael, Darren, great member on the channel. Alan, Harrison, Scott, great member on the channel. Stephen A, great member on the channel. Pat, all you guys, Michael White, great member on the channel. Anthony, Matthew, great member. All you guys, thank you all so much for chiming in. Llama, how's it going? Again, all you guys, thank you all so much for being here. I'll get your comments as soon as I can. But like I said, we have a lot to break down in this one. Sprite, how's it going? Jack, all great members on the channel. Let's start off by addressing the donation before we go any further. Sean Foley and Joel Blow, then that LFGM. There were definitely positives and negatives in this game, and we're going to go over all of it. I have a lot to say in this bullpen. There were things that I did like today, but for the most part, bullpen-wise, I was not too satisfied. I don't believe any other Mets fan was either, to put it lightly. So, again, thank you so much for the donation, my friend. I appreciate that. Hype in the chat for the dono there. But, okay, let's get into this game, guys. Like I said, it was a big one. I do also apologize in advance if I'm a little delayed, if I'm a little laggy at all. Everything's been running hot lately. It's hot outside, and two, I was streaming the game on my computer, so naturally when I do that and then jump into doing a stream right after, it might be a little finicky at first. So if there's any technical difficulties early in this one, I do apologize. I don't believe that'll be the case, but again, I digress. So let's get into this game again. The Mets won 9-6. How did we get here, right? Well, first I want to know how everyone feels in the chat right now. Please let me know how you feel. Are you guys happy about the series victory the way that I am? Are you, a little up and down? It's a win's a win. You're happy, but there are definitely things that could have been better. No matter what your thoughts are, make sure to let me know in the stream. Make sure to let me know in the comments below, and I will answer questions after we break down this game, because the Mets had Mad Max Scherzer on the bump today. And guys, who would have thought, especially with how the game started for the Mets, that Max Scherzer would be the worst starter in the Mets rotation through their first week of games? And no, I'm not exaggerating by saying that. That is a statistical fact, which is so absurd in itself. Max, of course, started the game, had himself bases loaded off of just walks, was not locating well. You could tell that pretty much every at-bat, for the most part, was a grind for Scherzer today. Topped out 97 on that fastball. The minimum was a little bit below it. We'll get into those advanced numbers here shortly. But Max got out of the jam unscathed in the first, and the Phillies didn't find themselves tacking on a run until the fourth inning, when Bryson Stott got himself an RBI single. And then in the fifth, nothing there either. So Max, again, finished his day. Really a phenomenal campaign, and just shows you how much of a bulldog he is on the mound. Even when he knows that he doesn't have his best stuff, which is in somewhat part what we saw in his debut, which I was in attendance in D.C. for Scherzer's first start as a Met. The second one, again, you saw similarities. Try and get things accustomed and acquainted with Tomas Nido, with the catcher. You got to make sure that you have things fine-tuned on the right connection there. They worked on it throughout the game, but again, Scherzer threw roughly 100 pitches in this one, only threw 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, all from that first inning, and that massive 7 strikeouts. So Max was still striking out at a tremendous rate, and we'll get into his pitching arsenal here a little bit in the show, but still a very strong performance from Max. And if it wasn't for him, Mets probably don't win this game with how horrendous the bullpen ended up being for them. You would think that after the Mets had an 8-1 lead in this one, thanks to a Pete Alonso absolute piss missile Oppo home run, his second home run this season. And Alonso now is raking at the DH position. He's only been in DH twice this season. First was in that DC series, now this. He has 9 RBIs in this spot and a couple home runs. So he's looking great. Pete, who had a really bad first at bat today too, wasn't happy with what I saw from him offensively the past couple days. He made up for it and then some today. He's my first star of the game. And as you see here, 3 for 5 with that home run, the 2 doubles, and the 5 RBIs total. I mean, how can you not love what you saw from Pete Alonso today? And every facet, he was just an absolute beast. Big Meat Pete, as we love to call him, the polar bear, he stayed true. He was just an absolute dog. I mean, I'll break down his numbers here a little bit further, but Pete Alonso is the reason, was the X factor along with him and Max Scherzer, why the Mets won this game. And then we saw outside that the Mets had a lot of offensive production this one. This game was the polar opposite of what we saw transpire yesterday after the Mets secured the victory 2-0 out of only having 3 hits. They had 9 hits today, but scored 9 times. They left a boatload of people on base. Last time I checked it, they left 15 on base, probably more than that. Mets had a lot of scoring opportunities against Aaron Nola, who was a little erratic earlier in this one. Aaron Nola, who's been inconsistent the past couple of years for the Phillies, still a strong starter, did end up hitting 2 players for the Mets today. The Mets got hit 3 times, which ended up with Sean Reed-Foley when he first came in relief for Max Scherzer later in this game to actually hit Gene Segura right on the wrist. It looked like it hurt. He was out for the remainder of the game because of that. And while I don't condone going after a guy specifically because of the fact that your team got hit, I will say that does feel like that what transpired there was not an accident. I'm honestly going to say my gut feeling was that because the Mets had an 8-1 lead at that point as they had Sean Reed-Foley in the game, they figured, you know what? First batter we're going to see, we're just going to plunk no matter who it is. After getting hit 3 times today, the Mets have now been hit 10 times this season, more than like half the league combined. They're just getting hit left and right. And I know they're not necessarily moving out of the way for every pitch, but it doesn't denounce the fact that they are getting drilled nonstop. And it looks like the Mets made a slight statement in doing so by hitting Segura. Again, very well could have been a situation where it wasn't purposeful, but just given the situation, knowing that if the Mets are going to do something like that, you got to know when the time is right. You can't do it with your starter on the mound, potentially get him thrown out of the game. The Mets did it after having a 7-run lead at that point. Again, that would soon change right after that because that's the ref gave up a couple runs, multiple runs, and not even a full innings pitched. But still, Mets, that hit by pitch happened. There were just so many things that transpired in this one, folks. I mean, from the pitching standpoint, Max Scherzer was a stud. Offensively, the Mets had a lot working. I know we're getting comments about Dom Smith. I'll answer them in the chat soon, guys. Just reiterate them to me once we get to, of course, the comment section part of the postgame show. But offensively for the Mets, we saw a lot. It started with Brandon Nimmo and that beautiful solo shot for the second time in as many days against the Philadelphia Phillies. He has really good numbers in his career against both Zach Wheeler and, yes, Aaron Nola, and that held true again by getting those bombs. Nimmo was on base today 3 times because he got walked twice. The Mets got a lot of walks, not just throwing walks where the Phillies were getting on base, but where they were actually getting walks themselves. So Brandon Nimmo, again, let's go through the lineup quick. He was fantastic. Francisco Lindor won my top 5 as well. 1 for 4 today. 2 runs scored, however, and a double and a walk. Lindor continues to get on base and has continued to clutch up for the Mets when they have needed him to. Getting those runs scored while on base is definitely important. Starling Marte, a perfect example of a man that is taking advantage of everything that is transpiring, even when he isn't necessarily hitting great. Again, he was 2 for 5 today with 2 runs scored and an RBI. But still, even Marte, if he does get a base knock, if he just gets on base somehow, because one of those runs scored was from an infield single. The other was kind of a bloop single that just beat out the second baseman because of the shift. I mean, as long as he is on the bases, you know that great things are going to happen. That transpired again with Marte, just an absolute stud. Yesterday, he stole a bag that led to a run scored thanks to Francisco Lindor's RBI single in the 8th. And today, he continues to just provide that type of offense, that gritty offense, great base running abilities, one of the best in all baseball, and had a very strong glove today too, as he had a nice throw from shallow right field to leg out and get Bryson Stott, who got the first hit off of Scherzer today, who tried to pull a single into a double. No, that was cut off short. Lindor got the nice tag. But then Pete Alonso, again, Big Meat Pete, as we were just talking about him, guys. Can we all just take a moment to appreciate Pete Alonso in this one? Again, has not had good at-bats for a good portion to start the season outside of his grand slam in DC a couple games ago. Today, he just full steam ahead, just absolutely raked in, no matter what pitcher he was matching up against. Again, 3 for 5 with the home run, the 2 runs scored, the 2 doubles, and that home run was opposite field, so I love it even more. And those 5 RBIs really helped the Mets. One guy who I think is really going to get slept on from today's performance, if say you're just basing things on numbers, but in reality, he really was a stud, and that was Eduardo Escobar. Eduardo Escobar didn't just have a great day at third base. He had a nice, beautiful spinning throw to get a runner out at first that eliminated the amount of runs potentially coming in after the bullpen came in later in the game. I think that was in the 7th, if I'm not mistaken. But Escobar was 1 for 2 today, had himself almost had himself a home run. A fan's glove touched it, and then it fell, and ended up being a triple for Escobar on the top of the 9th. But he got on base 4 times today, not just with the triple and the run scored, but was walked 3 times. So Eduardo Escobar, who is not known for by any means being an on-base king, he got on base without a problem today, and he has already been walked 8 times in his first 6 or 7 games of the season. So very impressive from Escobar. Again, it feels like he's feeding off of the Mark Cannas, the Brandon Nimmo's of the world, just having a strong eye at the plate, and that held true today. Then going for, further, Dom Smith, who got the start at first base today, while Pete Alonso was at DH. Dom did not have a good day at the plate today. Ended up striking out 3 times, and I know we have some controversy with Dom in the chat. Dom has not had much playing time at all this season, so no, I'm not going to view this as the end of the world by any stretch just because he had a bad day at the plate. Won't be the last time, not just for him, but for everyone in this lineup. Mark Canha has cooled down a bit after looking like he was for certain going to be the NL MVP. All jokes aside, though, he was 0 for 4 today with 1 strikeout. Jeff McNeil, 0 for 3 today. A little slow again for Jeff, but again, not a big... I liked one of his at-bats in particular. And Tomas Nido, 1 for 4 today with a run scored. Love to see that from Nido. I at least get 1 base knock today and a strikeout. But again, the Mets had a boatload of offense in this one. But let's get into, before I actually get into more on the bullpen and really how everything imploded the way it did and my thoughts on Max Scherzer's the advanced numbers, I want to give a quick shout out again. Everyone that's first chiming in the post-game coverage, I hope you guys are enjoying. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Help us get to 100 likes if we aren't there already. Help us get to 200 after that, and then so on and so forth. Help us get a 15K subs. Always appreciate it. And make sure to continue letting me know your thoughts about this massive 9-6 victory over the Phillies today, folks. I do want to address a donation, and then we will go further here in the post-game coverage. Darren, thank you so much for that. If you guys don't know, Darren is the biggest Mets fan from the UK that you guys will ever meet. He's an absolute beauty. Kyle Schwarber against New York Mets pitching 2022. Yep, 0 for 12, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. You love to see it. I'm so glad you brought this up, Darren, because, again, there were so many things that transpired in this game that I feel like I am going to forget to mention a thing or two. This was one of them originally. Because, yeah, Schwarber didn't go 1 series against the Mets all last season without beating the piss out of us, quite frankly. And this series, he simply couldn't hit a lick. He had 1 RBI, which I believe was a sac fly or just a fielder's choice, whatever it was. 0 for 12 in this series, 7 strikeouts. The Mets completely shut down, for the most part, the big sluggers for the Phillies in this series. Bryce Harper had an oppo bomb in the 9th off Diaz, but that didn't phase Diaz. Diaz got a couple strikeouts to end it without a problem in a non-save situation. So both Harper and Schwarber did not produce well at all in this series. They combined in total, if I'm not mistaken, to go 2 for 22 in this entire series between the two lefty sluggers. Mets knew how to pitch them really well and took advantage of a slow start for both of the players respectively. But yeah, Darren, thank you so much for that donation. I appreciate that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The fact that the Mets were able to shut down the New York Mets killer the way that they did is a promising sign of hopefully more things like that to come when the Mets match up with the Phillies next, which isn't too long from now. But all right, guys, let's talk for a second about Max Scherzer and his pitching arsenal, because after I do that, I want to completely deep dive again where everything went wrong for the bullpen today. Who's at fault here? Is Buck at fault for anything here? I'm going to tell you right now, I do not think Buck is at much fault for the bullpen today, if at all. Guys just simply have not been performing to the caliber that they should. Even with this being early in the season, you want to see better production from a couple guys in particular. But looking at Max Scherzer and his arsenal today, what did we see from Mad Max? Well, we saw him utilize all his pitches perfectly. Again, he topped out with his arsenal. 52% is where he was at the forcing fastball. And the lowest pitch that he had in regards to the amount of times he used it today was the curveball at 4%. And again, this was a Mad Max who definitely struggled a lot today with his location early, but was still able to get those outs, was able to get those force outs and those strikeouts just with some nasty sliders down and away to Castellanos and among other hitters. Scherzer is as much of a gamer as you can find. He's a future Hall of Famer, destined to be, no matter the circumstances. And in doing so, given the fact that he has all this experience as one of the best pitchers in baseball, he, even when he's not necessarily on his game 100%, he will make sure that you still get at minimum here 5 quality innings. And that's exactly what he produced for the Mets. So again, four-seam fastball topped out at 97. Minimum was 92. The average was 95 on the heater. So actually a little bit higher than his normal average on the fastball. He was pumping some gas today. Change up 20% of his arsenal today for Scherzer. Topped out 86. Minimum was 83 and the average was 85 right around there, which is normal for him. The slider at 15% of his arsenal for Scherzer today. 88 is where he topped out on the velo. 85 was the minimum and 86 was the average. The cutter, 9% of his arsenal today, had himself right around 92. Minimum was 89 and the average was 90. And the curveball at 4% of his arsenal topped out 78, minimum 76, and the average 77. So again, all in all, really, really happy with what I saw from Scherzer today. The fact that he was able to overcome the adversity the way that he did is the exact reason why the Mets were able to stay in this game early and then start to tack on those runs in the ensuing innings. Because if you look at how the Mets produced in this game, again, it was pretty spread out after a slow start. Both Scherzer and Nola were working their counts early, but they weren't giving up any runs for the first couple. But again, the Mets got that solo shot from Nimmo in the third. Then they tacked on a couple runs in the fourth. Then the fifth, another run. And then in the sixth, that's where it really blew it open at that point with those 4 runs, thanks to that Pete Alonso piss missile of a home run to give the Mets at that point a 7-run lead. Unfortunately, the Phillies in the bottom of the sixth would tack on 2 runs because of Sean Reed-Foley not pitching well. Then in the seventh, 2 more runs because of, yes, Joely Rodriguez, again, continuing to not get the proper outs for the Mets. To start the 7th inning, he faced the first 2 batters he saw, that one of them being a righty, one of them being a lefty. I believe one of them was JT Realmuto, and then the other was Harper, and he walked them both. And that led to Adam Ottavino coming in this game. And Ottavino gave up 2 hits, but no earned runs. But that was because of the fact that Joely was the reason why those runners were on. So those runs are tacked on him. Again, not an ideal start to the season for Joely Rodriguez. I know that he's going to get better, but I also know that he is quickly in the doghouse for many Mets fans that are not satisfied with his performance, knowing that you traded still a very strong reliever in Miguel Castro to acquire him. So fair criticism, rightfully so, but I don't really gripe at all at Buck in this one especially. I thought he was very strong with the lineup today. I was very happy that he had Dom Smith in the lineup over Cano and JD. It's unfortunate that Dom didn't even get a hit today because based on numbers, Dom has really good numbers against Aaron Nola in his career, far better than both JD Davis and Robinson Cano. So the numbers based on previous at-bats favor Dom Smith for today's lineup, but unfortunately for his sake, he wasn't able to produce. So I'm curious who's going to be, at first base. I'm curious who's going to be at the DH/first base spot for the Mets tomorrow. I'd imagine Alonso probably goes back to first, even though he's thrived so much, of course, at the DH position in a couple games, but yeah, Ottavino, again, I was a little frustrated with Ottavino too. He simply did not perform the way that I want him to, that any Mets fan want him to. They're in the 7th inning. He comes in, and you would think, okay, he's matched up against Nick Castellanos. This means that you're going to go down and away with that nasty slider because you know Castellanos is going to bite on that. No, he was throwing him sliders up and in and then threw him a fastball up and in that Castellanos was able to turn on to give them a run scored. And then he threw another pitch that was kind of right down the middle. It wasn't a bottom left corner slider or anything. And that tacked on another run that, again, were charged to Joely Rodriguez, not Adam Ottavino. But I really just didn't understand what Ottavino's thought process was going into the at-bats that he faced for the opposing hitters for the Phillies. You would think that he would utilize that slider more to go down and away, but he was struggling with his control early. Again, Ottavino, he has some of the nasty stuff among relievers in baseball, but the biggest gripe with him is the fact that he also does struggle with his control. He will walk guys. Mets will do their best to combat that this year, and thankfully, again, he didn't give up any more than what he did in that 7th inning. But that's still an inning where I want to see him actually go more down and away versus, just throwing kind of meatballs right down the pipe. I feel that Nick Castellanos could have easily been struck out had he have just thrown the sliders down and away. That should have been the recipe for success. We didn't get that. It is what is. Again, that just further added on to the frustration from the Mets bullpen today. And at that point, that was still a close game. But then Seth Lugo comes in. Seth Lugo, who simply could not even get one out for the Mets a couple days ago in Philly, was part of that 8th inning implosion, to put it lightly. He came out today and he stepped up big time, had himself 2 strikeouts, massive strikeouts for the Mets. in that 8th in the setup role. And then Edwin Diaz came in a non-save situation tonight. He had a phenomenal save yesterday in his first game back after the passing of his grandparent. So happy for him that he was just dominant with that slider as well. But today, he gave up that home run, which again was not bad placement for a pitch. Harper just took it oppo. That would have been an out in Citi Field. So it just shows you based on the ballpark. But 2, Harper, that's all he got in this entire series. And thankfully, that's all the Mets gave up because Edwin Diaz struck out the next batter in 3 pitches and just cruised. Again, he gave up a hit in that 1 run because of Bryce Harper, but got himself the strikeout in only 11 pitches, and he ended things. So not a save situation for the Mets, but another outing where Edwin Diaz got the job done. And I really don't put much blame, if at all, on him for that home run on Bryce. Bryce, again, the reigning NL MVP, just got himself enough on that oppo bomb. So, again, unlucky for Diaz's part, but for the Mets, they secured the victory 9-6 in this one. So I want to address one more donation here, folks, and then we'll get into all your questions because I know you got them. I know you're griping about the bullpen. I know you're griping about some at-bats that you would like to see more from because I agree. The Mets' second half of the lineup today didn't do jack. They did absolutely nothing. From quite literally Dom to Tomas Nido, they got little to no production. Thankfully, again, the Mets put on 9 runs today, but it's the fact that you didn't even feel comfortable with them having 9 runs in the end because the Phillies were tacking on the Mets bullpen really well. But Jaden here with a $5 donation. Thank you so much for that, buddy. I appreciate that. Hi, Wari. Just want to see your opinion on trade deadline this year. Someone you want and people you think will be available for the Mets. Jaden, I'm going to be blunt. I think it's way too early to talk about trade deadline. I've been asked this a lot, but especially because you went out of your way to be so generous to send a donation. I will tell you this, at least I believe, especially from what we're seeing early on, that the Mets will tack on pitching at the trade deadline. Could they go ahead and do some type of blockbuster deal? Of course, and we'll talk about those rumors and that fun stuff when we get closer to that point there in the summer. But for now, if we're basing anything on early results, is that 1, the Mets, you can never have enough pitching depth. Who knows how much this rotation is going to hold up? The Mets rotation right now, somehow, some way, has a 1.29 ERA through all their starts in total from everyone, even with Taijuan Walker and David Pearson combined. They have just pitched that well for their starters. Bullpen has not been the case, so I do expect the Mets to acquire some relievers. I expect them to kind of do it even before we get to the deadline. But if you're talking about the deadline, one thing I can promise you is that the Mets will tack on pitching. Should they not do anything drastic prior to that, it's just the easiest route to go. You can never have enough pitching. And then based on the team's offense, then that'll dictate, of course, how we're looking with the rentals available and how many teams will be selling. Because, again, we have expanded playoffs now. Lesser teams are going to be in a spot where they feel that they so adamant that they need to sell at the deadline versus previous years. But no less, Jaden, thank you so much for that donation. I appreciate that. And now, guys, we're going to get into all your comments and concerns. So for my people on replay, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap of the Mets' massive 9-6 victory over the Phillies. If you did, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below for my viewers on replay. And stay tuned for more great post-game, pre-game, and all different types of Mets coverage here on the channel.